Welcome back. Tonight we journey to ancient Greece, to the forges beneath Olympus, where fire meets divine will. Let this story carry you. This is the tale of Hephaestus, god of fire and forge. The only Olympian born imperfect. The only one cast out by his own mother. Yet from rejection came creation. From Ain came the most beautiful works the gods had ever seen. His story begins with a fall. On Mount Olympus, where the gods lived in eternal splendor, Hera the queen grew heavy with child. All expected another perfect immortal. But when the child was born, Hera's face twisted with horror. His legs were withered, his body imperfect. This was no son of hers. The other gods watched in uncomfortable silence as the Queen of Heaven lifted her newborn son. Not to embrace him, to throw him away. With one cruel motion, Hera hurled the infant from the peak of Olympus. Her own child, tumbling toward the distant sea far below. He fell for an entire day. The wind tore at his small body. The gods on Olympus had already forgotten him. Can you feel that descent? But the sea was watching. Thetis, a gentle nymph of the silver waves, saw the falling spark of divine light and opened her arms. She caught him just before he struck the water. The impact still shattered his legs forever, but she had saved his life. Deep beneath the waves, Thetis carried the wounded godling to her grotto. Her sister Eurynome waited, already preparing healing herbs. For 9 years, the sea nymphs raised the child that Olympus had discarded. They loved him as his mother never could. His legs would never heal. He would walk with pain for eternity. But in that underwater sanctuary, young Hephaestus discovered something miraculous. Fire. Even beneath the ocean, volcanic vents provided him with flame. And when his small hands touched the fire, they did not burn. The god of fire had found his element. What others feared, he could command. In flame, the rejected child found his first true friend. Thetis watched her adopted son begin to build. First small things, shells joined with heat, coral shaped into new forms. Then greater wonders. The boy who had been thrown away was becoming something extraordinary. His broken body housed an unbreakable spirit. His hands could shape miracles. And far above, on Olympus, the gods had no idea what they had cast away. The divine Blacksmith story was just beginning. 9 years passed beneath the waves. 9 years of healing, learning, and creation. The sea became Hephaestus's first true home. Thetis brought him medals from shipwrecks scattered across the seafloor. Bronze swords, golden jewelry, silver coins lost to storms and time. Each piece of wreckage became raw material in the young god's hands. Where mortals saw tragedy, Hephaestus saw possibility waiting to be shaped. His first true creation was a brooch for Thetis. Simple by the standards he would later achieve, but made with pure love and gratitude. When Thetis wore it, the other sea nymphs gasped. Nothing so beautiful had ever been made beneath the waves. Word began to spread. Eurynome asked for earrings next, then a necklace. Each creation surpassed the last as the young god's skills grew with frightening speed. The volcanic vents beneath the ocean floor became his allies. He learned to channel their heat, to create temperatures no mortal forge could match. He built bellows from giant clam shells, hammers from volcanic rock, tongues from the bones of ancient sea creatures. Necessity bred invention. By his 5th year beneath the waves, Hephaestus could shape any metal. Gold flowed like water under his touch. Bronze sang beneath his hammer. Thetis watched her adopted son with wonder and a touch of worry. His talent was divine. Sooner or later, Olympus would notice. But for now, the boy who had been thrown away knew only peace. The sea was kind. His mothers loved him. Fire obeyed his will. He began to create not just jewelry, but useful things. Cups that never spilled. Combs that untangled any knot. Mirrors that showed true reflections. Thetis was no ordinary sea nymph. She was a goddess in her own right, destined one day to bear a hero greater than his father. She had saved Hephaestus not from pity, but from recognition. She too knew what it meant to be used by the greater gods. She taught him more than craft. She taught him patience. She taught him that worth comes from within, not from the approval of those above. Eurynome balanced Thetis's solemnity with joy. She danced through the currents, laughed at small things, reminded him that creation should bring happiness. Together, the two sea goddesses gave Hephaestus what Olympus never could: unconditional love, acceptance of his differences, pride in who he was becoming. The young god grew stronger despite his injury. His upper body became powerful from working the forge, his arms thick with muscle. He crafted himself a cane of indestructible bronze, then crutches, then finally a wheeled chair that moved at his thought. He solved his own problems. His withered legs no longer defined him. When he sat at the forge, he was more powerful than any god who walked on perfect limbs. As the 9th year approached, his creations had grown beyond jewelry. He forged weapons that could cut through any armor, shields that could block thunderbolts. Thetis knew the time was coming. Word of the miraculous smith beneath the waves had spread from nymph to river god to messenger spirits. She made a decision. If Olympus was going to discover her son, she would control how. She would make them see his worth first. She asked Hephaestus to create his greatest work yet. A piece so beautiful that even the Queen of Heaven would desire it. Hephaestus worked for 40 days and 40 nights. He poured every lesson, every hour of practice, every ounce of love into one piece. A throne. Not just any throne, but a seat worthy of the Queen of the gods herself. Gold and silver woven like fabric. Peacock feathers rendered in precious metals, each eye a different gemstone. Curves that seemed impossible, comfort that invited eternal rest. When it was finished, even Thetis could not speak. The throne was the most beautiful object ever created by god or mortal hand. But something else gleamed in the young god's eyes. Something Thetis had not taught him. Something cold and patient and just. The throne was sent to Olympus as a gift. No name attached. Only the whisper that the smith beneath the waves wished to honor the queen. Now let us turn our gaze upward, to the realm the young smith had fallen from. To understand his revenge, we must know those who wronged him. Zeus, king of the gods, sat upon the highest throne. His word was law. His thunderbolt was judgment. He had watched Hera throw the child away. He had said nothing to stop her. The king of Olympus cared only for useful things, and a lame god seemed to have no use. Hera, queen of heaven, goddess of marriage and family. The irony was bitter. She had destroyed her own family with her vanity. She demanded perfection in all things. An imperfect child was an insult to her divine nature. Better thrown away than acknowledged as hers. But Hera loved beautiful things. When the magnificent throne arrived as a gift, her eyes lit with desire. Finally, something worthy of her. Ares, god of war, cared nothing for craft or beauty. He was blood and bronze and brutal strength. He laughed at anything he could not kill. He had been among those who watched the infant fall. He had laughed then too. The weak, in his view, deserved their fate. Athena was different. Goddess of wisdom and craft, she alone among the Olympians might have understood what Hephaestus could become. But Athena had been born from Zeus's head, already grown, already armored. She had never been helpless. She did not fully understand rejection. Still, she valued creation. In time, she would become Hephaestus's only true ally among the gods. But that alliance lay years in the future. And then there was Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Born from sea foam when Kronos' severed flesh fell into the ocean. Every god desired her. Every goddess envied her. She moved through Olympus knowing that she could have anyone, anything, with a single smile. She had never once thought about the lame god cast from Olympus. Why would she? He was broken, imperfect. Everything she was not. Yet fate has its ironies. The goddess of beauty would one day be given to the ugliest of gods. But that cruel joke lay ahead. Beneath Olympus, in the volcanic depths of Mount Etna, other beings served the cause of divine craft. The Cyclopes, one-eyed giants of ancient power. Brontes, whose name meant thunder. Stirrups, the lightning maker. Arges, the bright one. They had forged Zeus's thunderbolt in ages past. They would become Hephaestus's workers when he took his rightful place. But first, the young god had to claim that place. Through revenge. Back in the underwater grotto, Hephaestus waited. He knew his throne had reached Olympus. He knew his mother would sit in it. He counted the days. Thetis did not know what he had built into that beautiful throne. She had wanted to earn his place through wonder. He had chosen another path. He loved his sea mothers. Truly he did. But some wounds require more than love to heal. Some wounds demand justice. The message came carried by a dolphin. Hera had sat in the throne, and she could not stand up. The trap had sprung perfectly. On Olympus, chaos reigned. The queen of the gods was stuck to a chair, invisible chains binding her the moment she sat. She screamed for Zeus to free her. The king of gods tried. His thunderbolt shattered against the throne without leaving a mark. Ares hacked at it with his sword. The blade shattered. Athena examined it for weaknesses and found none. The trap was perfect. Word spread across Olympus. Only the Maker could free the queen. And the Maker was the son she had thrown from heaven 9 years ago. Beneath the waves, Hephaestus smiled. Not with joy, but with the cold satisfaction of a craftsman whose work had proven perfect. Thetis confronted him. Was this why he had made the throne so beautiful? To trap the mother who had discarded him. He met her eyes without shame. She threw me away, he said. She never looked for me. She never wondered if I survived. This is justice. Thetis had no answer. How could she argue? She had watched him suffer. She had dried his tears when he asked why his mother hated him. Olympus sent messengers. They sent bribes. They sent threats. Hephaestus ignored them all. He had waited 9 years. He could wait longer. Finally, they sent Dionysus. The god of wine was clever. He did not threaten or bribe. He brought the best wine in creation and simply talked. He spoke of what Hephaestus could have on Olympus. A forge greater than any in the world. The Cyclopes as his workers. Recognition as a true god. And a wife. The most beautiful goddess in existence. Aphrodite herself, given to him in marriage. Surely that was worth a mother's freedom. Hephaestus had seen Aphrodite only in the reflections of the sea. Her beauty had haunted him even in his underwater sanctuary. He hesitated. Thetis saw the change in him. She knew what he would choose. Love, or the illusion of love, could defeat even justified anger. But she did not try to stop him. Every child must leave eventually. Even divine children. Even those we rescued from the sky. Hephaestus agreed to Dionysus's terms. He would free Hera. He would take his place on Olympus. And Aphrodite would be his wife. He rose from the sea for the first time in 9 years. The sunlight was blinding after so long in the gentle glow of the deep. Behind him, Thetis and Eurynome watched from the waves. Their son was leaving. They had given him everything they could. Now he had to find his own way. The journey to Olympus was long. Hephaestus walked slowly on his damaged legs, but he walked with purpose. With every step, his anger sharpened. The gods had thrown him away. Now they needed him. Let them wait a little longer while the crippled god climbed toward the clouds. The climb to Olympus took 3 days. 3 days of pain in his withered legs, 3 days of burning determination in his heart. Mortals who saw him pass whispered prayers. A god walking among them, scarred and limping, ascending toward the clouds. They sensed something momentous. Dionysus walked beside him, offering wine and conversation. The god of revelry seemed genuinely curious about this smith who had trapped the queen of heaven. What was it like, Dionysus asked, to live beneath the sea? To be raised by nymphs instead of gods? To learn craft instead of war? Hephaestus found himself speaking of Thetis's kindness, of Eurynome's laughter, of the peace he had found in creation. He had not expected to share so much. Dionysus listened without judgment. Perhaps that was why he had been sent. Among all the Olympians, only he understood being an outsider. On the 3rd day, they reached the gates of Olympus. Golden doors taller than any mortal building, guarded by beings of living cloud. The gates swung open without being touched. The gods of Olympus were expecting him. They had been expecting him for days. He stepped onto the clouds of Olympus for the first time since infancy. The last time he had been here, he had been thrown from it screaming. The great hall lay before him. Through its crystal walls he could see them all. The gods who had watched him fall. The gods who had done nothing. And there, in the center, sat Hera on her beautiful golden prison. Her face was a mask of fury and humiliation. She could not even turn away. Hephaestus felt something shift in his chest. He had imagined this moment for 9 years. Now that it was here, the anger felt different. Heavier. He entered the throne room. Every divine eye turned to him. Zeus on his high throne. Ares with his hand on his sword. Athena watching with grey curiosity. And Aphrodite, standing near a column, her sea green eyes meeting his for the first time. Even in this moment, her beauty struck him like a physical blow. He forced himself to look away from her. There would be time for that later. First, he had business with the mother who had thrown him to the sea. He walked slowly toward the golden throne. Each step echoed in the silent hall. The gods parted before him like water before a ship's prow. Hera's eyes tracked his approach with undisguised hatred. Even now, even trapped by her own cruelty come back to haunt her, she felt no guilt. He stopped before her. "Mother," he said, and the word dripped with 9 years of abandonment. "Do you remember me now?" Hera's lips pressed thin. She would not give him the satisfaction of an answer. Even trapped, the Queen of Heaven would not humble herself to a cripple. The silence stretched. Zeus shifted uncomfortably on his throne. This was not a matter thunderbolts could solve. For once, the king of gods was helpless. Hephaestus circled the throne slowly, letting his fingers trail across its perfect surface. He knew every mechanism, every hidden chain, every beautiful trap. "I made this for you," he said softly. "Every peacock feather, every gemstone eye. I thought of you with every hammer stroke. Do you like it?" Hera's composure cracked. "Release me," she hissed. "Release me now, or when I am free, I will make you wish you had died in that fall." Hephaestus laughed. The sound echoed through Olympus, and several gods flinched. No one had ever laughed at Hera. No one had ever dared. "You threw me away because I was imperfect," he said. "Look at me now. I trapped the Queen of Heaven with my imperfect hands." The other gods watched this confrontation with fascination and unease. Family drama among immortals could reshape the cosmos. They had seen it before. Zeus rose from his throne. "Enough," he declared. His voice rolled like thunder, but Hephaestus did not flinch. Thunderbolts could not free Hera. Threats were meaningless. "Name your price," Zeus continued, voice softening. "You will have whatever you ask, but free my wife. This cannot continue." Hephaestus had already negotiated with Dionysus, but he wanted to hear Zeus say it. He wanted all of Olympus to witness the king bowing to necessity. "A place among you," Hephaestus said clearly. "A throne of my own in this hall. Recognition as an Olympian god, never to be cast out again." Zeus nodded slowly. "That had been promised already. You shall have a throne," he said. "What else?" The question of Aphrodite hung unspoken. "Aphrodite," Hephaestus said, and his voice caught slightly on the name. Despite everything, despite knowing this was politics, his heart still raced at the thought. The goddess of love showed no reaction. Her beautiful face remained serene as a statue. But something cold flickered in her sea green eyes. "Agreed," Zeus said quickly, before anyone could object. "Aphrodite shall be your wife. Now release Hera. We have lingered in this farce long enough." Hephaestus turned back to the golden throne. He placed his hands on its arms, touching hidden mechanisms only he knew. The trap had one key: forgiveness. But before he released her, he leaned close to Hera's ear. What he whispered, no other god could hear. Her face went pale. Then he pressed the hidden catches, and the invisible chains dissolved like morning mist. Hera was free. She leaped from the throne as if it burned. She stood shaking, rubbing her wrists where no marks remained. Her eyes found Hephaestus with pure hatred. But she said nothing. Whatever he had whispered silenced her. The other gods exhaled as one. The crisis was over, but the politics had only begun. A new power had risen on Olympus, forged in rejection. Zeus waved his hand, and a 13th throne materialized in the circle. Smaller than his own, but made of volcanic stone shot through with veins of gold. Hephaestus lowered himself onto it. For a moment, his damaged legs screamed with relief at finally resting. He had walked for 3 days on pure spite. He looked around the circle at his new family. Zeus, who had watched him fall. Hera, who had thrown him. Ares, who had laughed. And Aphrodite, who would be his wife but never his love. He understood that already. Her beauty was a gift that would never be opened. But also Athena, who studied him with genuine interest. Perhaps one ally in this nest of vipers. Perhaps one friend among the immortals. The following weeks were a blur of ceremony and construction. Zeus granted Hephaestus a forge beneath Olympus, fed by volcanic fire from the earth's core. The Cyclopes came to serve him, as Dionysus had promised. Brontids, stirrups, and Arges bent their ancient power to his will. He was their master now. The forge roared to life. Heat that would have vaporized mortals felt like a warm embrace to the god of fire. He was finally home. He built wonders immediately. A new chariot for Helios to carry the sun. Arrows that never missed for Apollo. A mirror of truth for no one in particular. The gods who had ignored him now came with commissions. They wanted his work. They needed his skill. Irony layered upon irony beneath Olympus. Then came the wedding. In the great hall of Olympus, before all the gods, Hephaestus and Aphrodite were joined in divine matrimony. Aphrodite wore white and gold, flowers blooming spontaneously in her hair. She was heartbreakingly beautiful. She looked at Hephaestus with polite emptiness. He had cleaned himself for the ceremony, worn his finest work. But no amount of gold could hide his withered legs, his rough hands, his scarred face. Zeus pronounced them wed. The gods cheered, some genuinely, most out of obligation. Hephaestus noticed Ares's smirk. He filed it away for later consideration. That night, in the chambers they would share, Aphrodite turned away from him. The marriage would remain unconsummated. She had agreed to be his wife, not his lover. Hephaestus did not force the matter. He had never wanted a prisoner. He had wanted love. But love, he was learning, could not be forged. He returned to his forge that night. The familiar heat welcomed him when nothing else did. Here, at least, his work was wanted. The pattern established itself quickly. Aphrodite reigned in beauty above. Hephaestus worked in fire below. They shared a home but not a life. He made her gifts, jewelry that made even her divine beauty more radiant. She wore them without comment. They did not bring her closer. Athena visited his forge often. She alone among the Olympians truly appreciated what he could do. They spoke of craft, of creation, of the joy in making. Together they designed her Aegis, the terrible shield bearing Medusa's head. Athena provided the vision. Hephaestus provided the skill. It was a perfect partnership. "Why do you stay with her?" Athena asked once, meaning Aphrodite. "She gives you nothing." He had no answer that made sense, even to himself. Perhaps because he had been thrown away once. He could not bear to be the one who let go, even when holding on hurt. Meanwhile, he filled Olympus with his creations. Automated servants of bronze that moved like living things. Tables that served food on their own. Chairs that offered perfect comfort. The gods had come to depend on him. Every weapon, every chariot, every magical device came from his forge. He had made himself indispensable. Even Hera commissioned work from him now. She never apologized. She never acknowledged what she had done. But she needed his skill, and that was something. Thetis visited sometimes, rising from the sea to check on her adopted son. She saw his success. She also saw his loneliness. "You have everything you demanded," she said gently. "A throne, a wife, recognition. Are you happy?" He could not lie to her. So he said nothing. She held him then, as she had when he was a broken child falling from the sky. Some wounds, she knew, never fully heal. But Hephaestus found his own kind of peace. Not happiness, but purpose. Every creation was a victory. Every perfect weld was a moment of transcendence. If he could not be loved, he would be needed. If he could not be beautiful, he would create beauty. The forge was enough. It had to be enough. He thought the story was ending. He had his revenge. He had his place. He had learned to live without love. But the gods are never finished with their cruelties. And somewhere on Olympus, in secret chambers far from the forge, Aphrodite was meeting another god. One whose beauty matched her own. One whose passion burned as hot as any fire. Ares, god of war. He had wanted Aphrodite since she emerged from the sea foam. And Aphrodite, bored and trapped, had finally welcomed his attention. The god of war and the goddess of love. The most beautiful and the most brutal. They thought no one would discover them. They thought Hephaestus too absorbed in his forge to notice. They were wrong. Hephaestus was about to discover the cruelest betrayal of all, and when he did, his next creation would shock all of Olympus. But let us pause here. Let us take a breath. The god of the forge has achieved what he sought. A throne, a title, a wife in name. He trapped the mother who threw him away, and made her watch as he took his rightful place. That was justice, of a kind. He won recognition from gods who had ignored his fall. They commission his work now. They need him. That was victory, of a kind. He married the most beautiful goddess in existence. She lives in his home. She wears his jewelry. That was the prize, of a kind. But revenge has not healed him. Recognition has not warmed him. And the most beautiful wife in creation has never once looked at him with love. This was his first great lesson. You cannot forge love. You cannot craft someone into caring. Some things exist beyond even divine skill. So he threw himself into his work. If the heart could not be filled, the hands could stay busy. Creation became his comfort, his purpose, his prayer. And his work was magnificent. Zeus's thunderbolts reforged sharper than before, Apollo's chariot running smoother across the sky, Artemis's arrows finding their marks across impossible distances. He built the golden maidens who served him, thinking beings of bronze who anticipated his needs. If mortals would not love him, perhaps his creations could. They were the first artificial beings to think and feel. He had given them what the other gods had denied him, unconditional acceptance. Athena saw this and understood. You have made yourself a family, she observed, one that cannot reject you. Was that the plan all along? Perhaps, he admitted, or perhaps I just needed to create something that would stay. Everything else in his life had been taken or given conditionally. So ends the first chapter of the divine blacksmith's tale. He has risen from the sea. He has claimed his throne. He has learned that victory is complicated. But a new challenge awaits him, a betrayal he never expected, and a choice that will define whether he becomes bitter or becomes wise. Rest here for a moment with the god of fire. Feel the warmth of his forge. The next part of his journey will test everything he has built. Helios sees everything. The god who drives the sun across the sky watches all that happens beneath his light. And he had seen plenty. He had watched Aphrodite slip away from her husband's forge. He had seen where she went. He had seen who was waiting for her there. Helios owed Hephaestus a favor. The smith had repaired his chariot when it cracked from the strain of carrying the sun. Now he would repay it with truth. He descended to the forge one evening, his light dimmed to merely blinding rather than lethal. Hephaestus, he said, I bring news you will not wish to hear. Hephaestus looked up from his work. Some part of him already knew. Perhaps he had always known, since the wedding night when she turned away. Your wife, Helios said carefully, has been visiting Ares. Not as a friend, not briefly. They meet whenever you are deep in your work. The hammer fell from Hephaestus's hand. It struck the floor with a sound like thunder. The Cyclopes stopped their work. Even the flames seemed to hold their breath. He had expected indifference. He had made peace with an empty marriage. But this was mockery. This was his enemy in his own bed. Ares. Of all the gods, it had to be Ares. The one who had laughed when he fell. the one who represented everything Hephaestus was not. Helios withdrew quietly. He had done what honor required. What Hephaestus did with the truth was his own affair. The sun god returned to his chariot and his endless journey. For 3 days Hephaestus did not emerge from his forge. The flames burned low. The Cyclopes worked in nervous silence. Something terrible was being born in that darkness. Inside, the god of fire sat motionless. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He only thought, turning the betrayal over and over like metal in his mind. He could confront them, storm in with accusations. But what would that achieve? Ares would laugh. Aphrodite would shrug. The other gods would watch and whisper. He could divorce her, send her back to Zeus. But that too would be seen as his failure. The ugly god who could not keep the beautiful wife. No. If there was to be humiliation, it would not be his alone. If there was to be exposure, the whole world would see who was truly shameful. He rose from his stillness. He fed the forge. The flames leaped up eagerly, sensing their master's return to purpose. He had work to do. This time, he did not create something beautiful. This time, he created something perfect. A net so fine it was invisible. So strong nothing could break it. He worked with cold fury, every strand a link in the chain of justice. The net took shape like a spider's web spun from starlight. The Cyclopes watched in awe. They had seen their master create wonders, but nothing like this. This was craft transformed into vengeance, beauty weaponized. 7 days and 7 nights he worked. He did not rest. He did not think of anything but the perfect mesh that would catch gods like flies. When it was finished, he held it up to the light. The net was completely invisible. Only he could see its intricate pattern, know its terrible strength. He tested it against a thunderbolt from Zeus's own supply. The net caught the lightning without tearing. It held the bolt until he released it. Now he needed to set the trap. He announced to all of Olympus that he was leaving. A journey to Lemnos, his sacred island. He would be gone for days. Aphrodite smiled when she heard. It was the first genuine emotion she had shown him in months. The smile of a predator whose prey was leaving. She did not see him pause at the door to their chambers. She did not see him place something invisible over the bed. She saw nothing at all. He left Olympus openly, making sure every god saw him depart. He descended the mountain, crossed the sea toward Lemnos. But he did not go far. He found a hidden place among the clouds and waited. Ares would come to Aphrodite the moment he believed it safe. Predators are predictable that way. Night fell over Olympus. Stars emerged, and through the divine darkness, Ares slipped toward the chambers of the absent god's wife. Aphrodite welcomed him as always. They thought themselves safe. They thought the crippled smith was far away, hammering at his mortal forge. They were wrong. What happened next would shake Olympus to its foundations. The trap was set. The prey had entered. And the hunter was about to return. Hephaestus flew back to Olympus on wings he had crafted himself. Not the borrowed sandals of Hermes, but his own invention. He needed no one else's gifts. He landed silently outside his own chambers. Through the walls he could hear them, laughing. His wife and his enemy, in his home, in his bed. With a single word of divine command, he activated the net. Inside the chamber, invisible chains snapped tight. The laughter turned to screams. He did not rush inside. He had waited 9 years for Hera. He had waited 7 days crafting this trap. He could wait a moment more to savor it. Then he threw open the doors. And there they were. Ares, god of war, and Aphrodite, goddess of love, tangled together in chains of woven starlight. The net held them fast, limbs intertwined in mockery of their passion. They could not move. They could not escape. They could only rage and plead. Ares roared threats. He would destroy the smith. He would tear Olympus apart. But his sword lay across the room, and his arms were pinned by gossamer threads. Aphrodite tried different tactics. She wept, she begged. She promised things she had never offered in their marriage. Hephaestus watched unmoved. He had believed her beauty once. He had hoped her love could be earned. Now he saw her clearly a goddess who used desire as a weapon against everyone. But exposure to him alone was not enough. He had promised himself all of Olympus would see. Let the gods witness what honor looked like in heaven. He sent word to every corner of the divine realm. Come to the chambers of Hephaestus. Come see what the god of war does when he thinks no one watches. They came. All of them came. Zeus and Poseidon, Apollo and Hermes, every god who could make the journey. They gathered outside the smith's chambers. Hephaestus threw the doors wide. Behold, he announced, his voice carrying to every ear. The god of war and the goddess of love, caught in my bed. The gods stared. Then they began to laugh. Not kind laughter, but the cruel mirth of those who finally see the mighty brought low. Ares, who had mocked the crippled infant, now lay exposed and ridiculous. His perfect warrior's body tangled in threads he could not break. Aphrodite, whose beauty had enslaved gods and mortals alike, now lay stripped of dignity. Her power over desire meant nothing when she was the object of ridicule. Hermes leaned over to Apollo. I would gladly be caught in such a net, he whispered, if it meant lying with Aphrodite. Even now her beauty inspired desire. The goddesses notably had not come. Athena, Hera, Artemis. They stayed away. This spectacle, they felt, diminished everyone involved, including the one who staged it. Hephaestus noticed their absence. Something shifted in his chest. Was this truly victory? Or had he become as small as those who had hurt him? Zeus stepped forward, his face unreadable. Release them, he commanded. This has gone far enough. The king of gods was not accustomed to such scenes. Hephaestus turned to face his king. Not yet, he said. First, I want the bride price returned. Every gift I gave for Aphrodite, I was sold a false marriage. The gods murmured. This was reasonable. A marriage obtained through promises of fidelity, broken so flagrantly. Surely the wronged husband deserved something. Poseidon stepped forward. He had always liked the craftsman who made his trident. I will guarantee the debt, he offered. Ours will pay. Release them. Hephaestus looked at the sea god. Poseidon had never mocked him, had never laughed at his fall. Perhaps not all the Olympians were enemies. And what if Ares does not pay? Hephaestus asked. What guarantee do I have that the god of war will honor a debt to a crippled smith? Then I will pay it myself, Poseidon said firmly. On my honor as god of the seas. You will not be cheated again, brother. The word struck Hephaestus like a hammer blow. In all his time on Olympus, no one had called him that. Not once. Not until now. He looked around the chamber. At Ares still struggling and cursing. At Aphrodite still weeping her false tears. At the gods who had laughed at their humiliation. He had wanted them to suffer as he had suffered. And they had. For this moment, at least, they knew what it felt like to be mocked and helpless. But the satisfaction he had expected, the healing he had hoped for, it was not there. The wound in his heart remained unchanged by their pain. He thought of Thetis, who had caught him when he fell. She had never sought revenge on Hera. She had simply loved him, and let that be enough. He thought of his forge waiting below, of the creations that still called to him, of the automatons who needed no one's humiliation to bring him peace. He thought of Athena, who had not come to watch this shame. She knew him better than he knew himself. She knew this was beneath him. The god of fire stood at a crossroads. He could demand more. He could extend their suffering. He could become the monster that rejection had tried to make him. Or he could choose differently. He could prove that he was more than his wounds. That the child thrown from Olympus had grown into something better than those who threw him. He raised his hand. The net dissolved like morning mist. Ares and Aphrodite tumbled free, sprawling on the floor in undignified heaps. The watching gods fell silent. They had expected demands, prolonged negotiations, perhaps even violence. They had not expected forgiveness. Ares scrambled for his sword, his armor, his dignity. He fled without a word, unable to face the smith, who had bested him with nothing but craft and patience. Aphrodite rose more slowly. She looked at Hephaestus with something new in her eyes. Not love. Perhaps she was incapable of that. But something like respect. "You could have kept us there forever," she said quietly. "Why did you let us go?" It was perhaps the first honest question she had ever asked him. Because Hephaestus said, "Your suffering does not ease mine. I wanted it to, but it does not. Keeping you trapped would only trap me too." Aphrodite had no response. She gathered her robes and left, passing through the silent crowd of gods. For once, no one watched her with desire. The other gods drifted away, sensing the spectacle was over. They whispered among themselves. The smith had shown them something unexpected, strength without cruelty. Poseidon clasped Hephaestus's shoulder before leaving. "Well done, brother," he said. "That took more courage than holding them." The sea god meant it. Zeus lingered last. He studied his wife's rejected son with new eyes. "I underestimated you," he admitted. It was as close to an apology as Zeus could manage. Hephaestus nodded but said nothing. He did not need Zeus's approval anymore. He did not need anyone's approval. He had found something better: self-respect. Alone at last, he walked through his empty chambers. The bed where they had betrayed him. The net that had caught them. The hollow victory that had taught him truth. He gathered the dissolved net, its golden threads now visible. He would melt it down. Create something new from it. Something that healed rather than hurt. He descended to his forge. The Cyclopes looked up with questions in their single eyes. Their master seemed different somehow, lighter, despite what had happened. He fed the net's threads into the furnace. Gold and spite and pain, all of it melted together, becoming raw material once more, ready to become something new. As he worked, Athena appeared at the forge entrance. She did not speak, only watched. When he finally looked up, she was smiling. "I wondered which path you would choose," she said. "I am glad it was this one." The goddess of wisdom had tested him, and he had passed. "You could have told me," he said without rancor. "You could have said this would feel empty." She shook her head. "Some lessons cannot be taught, only learned." She stayed to help him work. Not with the forge. That was his domain. But with the design. Together they shaped the melted gold into something beautiful. A brooch, like the first one he had made for Thetis. But grander. A gift for his sea mother, to thank her for teaching him how to love without possession. When it was finished, he held it up. The gold that had been his trap was now his gratitude. The pain that had been his prison was now his art. He would bring it to Thetis himself. But first there was more work to do. There was always more work to do. And now, finally, that felt like blessing, not burden. Word spread through Olympus of what the smith had done. Not just the trap, that was expected, but the release, the mercy, that surprised everyone. The gods began to see him differently, not as the crippled reject they had pitied or ignored, but as something rare among immortals, a being capable of growth. Ares avoided him completely. The war god could not face the craftsman who had defeated him with thread and patience. Shame was foreign to Ares, and he hated the feeling. Aphrodite remained his wife in name, but they both understood the marriage was over in truth. She moved to Cyprus, her sacred island. He did not try to stop her. It was, in its way, a kind of freedom. He no longer hoped for what could not be. He no longer needed what was never offered. He simply was. He threw himself into creation with new purpose. Not to prove anything. Not to earn love. Simply because making things was what he was born to do. He built Talos, the bronze giant who would guard the island of Crete. A protector for those who could not protect themselves. Like he had once been. He forged the armor of Achilles, with the entire cosmos hammered into its shield. Stars and seasons and cities at war, a world in miniature for a mortal hero. He created Pandora, the first mortal woman, shaping her from clay and giving her form at Zeus's command. Even knowing her purpose was to bring sorrow, he made her beautiful. Each creation was an act of love. Not love for those who received the gifts. Many would use them poorly. But love for the craft itself, love for the making. Thetis came to visit him one final time before she departed for her own destiny. Her son, the hero Achilles, would soon be born, and she had preparations to make. She saw the brooch he had made for her, and tears filled her eyes. "You learned," she said. "You learned what I tried to teach you, how to transform pain into beauty." He embraced her, this sea goddess who had saved him twice. Once from the ocean, and once from becoming someone consumed by hate. She would always be his true mother. When she left, he did not feel alone. He had his work, he had Athena's friendship, he had the respect of those worth respecting. It was enough, it was more than enough. The forge burned eternal beneath Olympus. The hammers of the Cyclopes rang in endless rhythm. And at the center of it all, the god of fire found his peace. He had been thrown away. He had been broken. He had been betrayed. And he had risen above all of it, not through revenge, but through creation. The child who fell from Olympus had become its most indispensable god. Not because they loved him, but because he had learned to love himself and his work. That was his true victory. Not the throne, not the trapped queen, not the humiliated lovers, but the simple, profound peace of a craftsman at his forge. And so we reach the heart of Hephaestus' story. Not a battle won, not an enemy defeated, but a choice made in the moment when revenge was sweetest. He could have kept Ares and Aphrodite trapped forever. Divine chains for divine betrayers. Justice by any measure. But he chose mercy instead. Not because they deserved it. They did not. But because holding on to anger was its own kind of trap, and he had been trapped long enough. The god thrown from heaven by his mother learned that heaven was not a place above the clouds. It was a state of being. It was peace with oneself. He found that peace in the forge, in the heat and the hammer and the endless transformation of raw materials into beauty. This was his worship. This was his prayer. The other gods never fully understood him. How could they? They were born perfect, and perfection cannot comprehend the journey from brokenness to wholeness. But those who were themselves broken, mortals with their short lives and endless struggles, they understood. They prayed to Hephaestus. They found hope in his story. If the ugliest god on Olympus could find peace, perhaps they could too. If the rejected child could become indispensable, perhaps their own wounds had purpose. Hephaestus never stopped creating. Even now, in stories told millennia later, we imagine him at his anvil. Hammer rising, hammer falling, beauty emerging from fire. He made peace with Hera eventually, not forgiveness exactly, some wounds scar rather than heal. But acceptance. She was what she was. He was what he had become. He never stopped loving Aphrodite, in his way. But he learned that loving someone does not mean possessing them. Sometimes it means letting them go. And his creations spread across the world. Talos guarding Crete, Achilles wearing his armor into Troy, the automatons serving on Olympus, his legacy in metal and fire. The divine blacksmith story teaches us this: what you create matters more than what was done to you. How you respond to pain defines you more than the pain itself. We are all thrown from heaven in our own ways. We all fall and break and bear scars that never fully fade. But we can choose what to make from the pieces. Hephaestus chose to make beauty, to make wonder, to make things that would outlast even the gods themselves. And in that choice, he found his immortal peace. Now let us step back from the story and ask, what did Hephaestus mean to the ancient Greeks who first told his tale around their fires? He was, first and foremost, the god of fire. Not the wild fire that destroys, but the controlled fire that transforms. The fire of the hearth and the forge. Every blacksmith who heated metal, every potter who fired clay, every cook who prepared meals, they all worked under Hephaestus's blessing. He was the god of making things. In a world of gods who ruled and fought and loved, Hephaestus stood apart. He worked. He created. He transformed raw materials into objects of use and beauty. The Greeks valued warriors. They celebrated kings. But they also knew that civilization depended on craftsmen. Someone had to make the swords the warriors swung. Hephaestus's disability was central to his meaning. He was the only Olympian with a physical imperfection. In a pantheon of perfect beauty, he limped and struggled. This made him accessible. Mortals with their own imperfect bodies could see themselves in Hephaestus as they never could in Apollo or Aphrodite. His story told the disabled that they too had divine potential, that the body's limitations need not limit the spirit, that worth could be forged, not inherited. But his disability was also a mark of injustice. He was cast out not for any fault, but for failing to meet an arbitrary standard of beauty. The Greeks understood that the world was often unfair. Good people suffered, bad people prospered. Hephaestus's story acknowledged this truth without despair. His response to injustice was creative rather than destructive. He did not wage war on Olympus. He made himself essential to it. Victory through excellence. The golden throne that trapped Hera was more than revenge. It was proof that the rejected child had surpassed those who rejected him. Craft as vindication. Fire itself carried deep symbolism for the Greeks. It was the gift Prometheus stole from heaven, bringing civilization to humankind at terrible cost to himself. Hephaestus was fire's master and guardian. When mortals used fire wisely, to cook, to forge, to warm, they honored him. When fire destroyed, it had escaped his control. The forge was a liminal space in Greek thought, a place where solid became liquid, where raw became refined, where nothing became something, pure transformation. Hephaestus presided over all such transformations. He turned ore into tools, chaos into order, pain into beauty. He was the god of becoming something new. His marriage to Aphrodite puzzled ancient commentators even then. Beauty wed to ugliness. Love given to the unloved. What did it mean? Some said it showed that love cannot be controlled or assigned. Others said craft and beauty belong together, even when it seems impossible. Perhaps the marriage simply acknowledged that life is full of mismatches, that we often receive what we did not earn and fail to receive what we deserve. His automatons, the golden maidens, the bronze bulls, Talos, represented something revolutionary. The dream of artificial life created intelligence, mechanical wonder. Thousands of years before computers, the Greeks imagined thinking machines. And they imagined their creator as the wounded god, who knew what it meant to be rejected. Perhaps he made them because he understood what it meant to need unconditional acceptance. He gave his creations what his mother had not given him. The myth also speaks to the nature of creativity itself. Hephaestus's greatest works came from his deepest wounds. Pain became fuel for creation. Artists across millennia have recognized this truth, that the drive to create often springs from the need to heal. That broken people make unbroken things. What universal truths does Hephaestus offer us? First, that rejection need not define us. What we build from our pain matters more than the pain itself. Second, that mercy frees the one who grants it. When Hephaestus released the trapped lovers, he released himself from the prison of endless anger. Third, that our worth is not determined by those who reject us. Hera's cruelty said nothing about Hephaestus's value, only about her own limitations. Fourth, that found family can be stronger than blood. Thetis and Eurynome loved Hephaestus more truly than his birth mother ever could. And finally, that there is dignity in work, honor in craft, and transcendence in creation. What we make with our hands can outlast even the gods themselves. These truths have echoed across 3,000 years, because they remain true. Hephaestus speaks to anyone who has ever felt broken and dared to create anyway. When Rome conquered Greece, they did not destroy the Greek gods. They adopted them, gave them new names, wove them into their own stories. Hephaestus became Vulcan. The Roman god of fire kept his forge, his limp, his craft, but the Romans placed his workshop inside actual volcanoes. When Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii, Romans understood it as Vulcan's forge overflowing. The god's anger made manifest in liquid fire and ash. Our word volcano comes from his name. Every time we speak of volcanic activity, we echo the ancient Roman worship of the forge god. The Vulcanalia festival honored him each August, when summer heat made fire most dangerous. Romans offered fish to the flames, hoping to appease the forge god's hunger. Medieval blacksmiths kept Hephaestus alive in their own way. Every forge was a small temple, every anvil an altar, every creation an offering. Renaissance artists rediscovered his story and painted it anew. Velázquez showed his forge. Rubens captured the trapped lovers. The myth found fresh audiences. His automatons captured imaginations across centuries. Leonardo da Vinci sketched mechanical knights. The dream of artificial life traced back to Hephaestus's golden maidens. When the Industrial Revolution filled the world with factories and forges, Hephaestus seemed more relevant than ever. The age of making had truly arrived. Modern robotics fulfills his ancient dream. Our mechanical servants think and serve as his golden maidens once did. We have become Hephaestus's heirs. The archetype he embodies, the wounded artist, the rejected creator, the one who makes beauty from pain, appears throughout modern storytelling. Tony Stark building his iron suit in a cave. Quasimodo ringing his bells in Notre Dame. Edward crafting with scissor hands. All children of Hephaestus. Disability representation has evolved, but Hephaestus remains one of the oldest examples in Western literature of a disabled character defined by ability, not limitation. He showed that physical difference need not prevent greatness, that the body's shape says nothing about the spirit's capacity. That worth is earned, not inherited, in Silicon Valley, in maker spaces, in garages where inventors tinker. The spirit of Hephaestus lives on. Wherever someone transforms an idea into reality, he is there. His story reminds us that technology is neither good nor evil. Fire warms and destroys. Creations can protect or harm. The maker's intention shapes the meaning. 3,000 years after Greek poets first sang of him, Hephaestus still matters, still inspires, still offers hope to anyone who has ever felt broken. As long as humans create, as long as we transform raw material into meaning, the divine blacksmith will have his worshippers. His forge burns eternal. And so we come to the end of our journey with the divine blacksmith. The fire burns low, and the hour grows late. Rest is calling. We have traveled far tonight. From the heights of Olympus to the depths of the sea. From rejection to redemption. From pain to peace. We met a god who was thrown away by his mother and caught by strangers who became his truest family. Some bonds are chosen, not born. We watched him discover fire, and in fire find his purpose. Some callings find us in our darkest moments and give us light to follow. We saw him craft revenge, and then choose to let it go. The hardest strength is knowing when to release what we have every right to hold. And we found him at peace in his forge, hammer in hand, creating beauty that would outlast the stars. Some victories are quiet. Some triumphs are made. Not one. Thank the ancient Greeks who first told this tale. They understood something true about suffering and creation, and they gave us a god who embodied that truth. Thank the countless voices across centuries who kept his story alive. Every retelling added something new while preserving what mattered most. And thank yourself for listening, for giving this ancient tale an hour of your attention. The myths live, because we continue to find meaning in them. May you carry something from tonight into your dreams. Perhaps the warmth of a forge that welcomes you. Perhaps the knowledge that broken things can still create beauty. The divine blacksmith's fire never goes out. Whenever you create something, whenever you transform pain into purpose, a small part of that flame lives in you. Rest now. Let the embers warm you as you drift away. The forge will still be burning when you wake. Good night, and thank you for joining us.